12 here. It said 18, so you never know. So I think are you all talked out? Need a longer break, perhaps. We're going to go ahead and get started. Others may wander in. I can't remember the number, Anita, so I'm not sure if I need to count. Hard to say. Okay, all right. We won't wait then. We'll take off, and folks can join us as they will if they like to. So once again, I'm Susan Jackson Down, serving as your executive director at the national level with the other 7 members of your staff, 2 of which are here with you. We're going to present to you Presbyterian Women Essentials. Again, the new manual for Presbyterian women. The manual used to be, if some of you recall it, about 200 pages long. It was a big book. I still have copies. In 2016, we streamlined it and to a little blue book. You may remember that. It had pictures, a blue book. And then we were still selling it at that time. And then we downsized it again in 2023 because we needed to streamline even more and answer the needs that are emerging as Presbyterian Church USA shifts and changes, and Presbyterian women along with it. So we will talk through the book today, but I'll let Pam greet you too, and be quiet for a second.
That's okay. Pam Snyder, again, I'm the moderator for the National Board of Directors for Presbyterian Women Incorporated. And this document we're going to walk through this morning, and everyone has a copy now? Did everyone get a copy? Thanks. And Juliana, will you kind of watch if somebody else comes in and make sure they get one? So we have just about an hour to walk through this. If you have questions, please do ask them, because this is supposed to be an informational session and help you understand everything that's in PW Essentials. Just as a reminder, too, we are very flexible as Presbyterian women, and I think one of the seeds that we'd like to plant, too, is we don't have to do things the same way we've done it for the last 50 years. It's okay to change with the times and to be what Presbyterian women need now and going forward. Do you want? This testimonial came from someone in my presbytery. I'm a member of Shenandoah Presbytery in the western part of Virginia. And I had handed the PW Essentials out, 12 to 18 months prior to this woman making this comment, and encouraged our coordinating team to please read it and to use it as a tool and a resource for them in their leadership roles. No one did. Apparently, and this is what one of Frances Craig shared back with me in an email, and she sent it to everybody on our coordinating team, and you can see she said, Pam handed out the PW Essentials to all of us last year, but I never took time to read it. I just finished reading it, and it's a great resource, easy to access, blah, blah, blah. You can see what she's got there, but here's how she ended it. She said, anything that will encourage folks to use this document is fine with me, because I'd asked her if it was okay for us to quote her. She said, I think anyone who looks at it will find useful information. Not to be a smarty britches, but it is essential. So, unsolicited comment back on this.
So we're going to speed things up, right? We're going to use some acronyms. So we thought we'd help with a little quiz. Quizzes are fun, right? So we want to run down through these words and make sure everybody knows what those acronyms stand for. So no grades here. So FLC, ICFLC. I talked about these earlier today. What is FLC? Fellowship of the Least Coin, right? And ICFLC is the International Committee for Fellowship of the Least Coin, where Presbyterian Women serves as treasurer. GA, how about that one? All right, 100% there. How about PwC? All of you are in one. PW in the congregation, yep. PWP. In the presbytery, PWS. That's it. PW Inc. National Board, National PW. PLNW. Now, this is a tricky one because it's new and it's General Assembly related. Presbyterian Life and Witness. That's right. That's the name of the new agency that's been formed out of the Office of the General Assembly and the Presbyterian Mission Agency of the National Church. So they merged those two big agencies into one, and they call it now Presbyterian Life and Witness. So if you hear that, and we have relationships with PLNW, so you'll see that come up, and we may use that acronym, but we want you to know what that is, not just for our presentation, but because it's your church, our church. So how about WDP, WDP USA, and WDPIC? Also mentioned earlier today. It's a tricky one. 100th anniversary is coming up for World Day of Prayer, right? World Day of Prayer USA is the USA chapter of World Day of Prayer International, and WDPIC is their international committee where Presbyterian Women serves, again, as treasurer. Now here's one you won't know, but we're going to talk about it here in a minute. What about WAC? That's the World, somebody got a guess? Yep. Or knowledge. World Association of Christian Communicators. Who's ever heard of that? Did you know that Presbyterian Women is a member and has been for years? WAC, the World Association of Christian Communicators, is a group who works globally for communication justice. There's a North American chapter, and Presbyterian women have served on that board for years. So WAC is in this book, but I think it's something that folks aren't familiar with, and so I like to talk about it. I personally serve now on the board, and so does Steph Patterson, another staff member. Very important global work that's done by WAC, and they're often represented at CSW, which stands for? All right, that one we got. Okay, we'll push on. We won't come back to this, so you're good. I want to talk for just a minute. You've got copies of the book in hand. If you don't, Juliana can help you with that, our able assistant. Just first, as an educator, which I have been in my past, I always tell students and my own self, study a table of contents first. That gives you the framework of the book. You know where you're headed, you know what's contained, and you should be able to skim those headers and have a pretty good sense of what you're about to learn from the text in front of you. So section 1 is about basics. Everything we do at all levels of Presbyterian women begins with a purpose. Section 2 deals with PwC, Presbyterian women in the congregation. And this answers many of the frequently asked questions that staff and national leadership receive. Sections 3 and 4, Presbyterian women in the presbytery, Presbyterian women in the synod. Section 6 talks about the Commission on the Status of Women. Section 5, I skipped it, is PW Churchwide. So there's information in here on PW Churchwide. Section 7 talks about national communications, how those work. Section 8 highlights PW giving, which we touched on this morning, or Pam did. Section 9 is an overview of PW relationships with the national church. And I mentioned this morning that our institutional relationship agreement with the General Assembly renewed this year at General Assembly. And that describes how Presbyterian women as an organization and the General Assembly of the church relate to one another. We have a version of that for the session in the congregation. For Presbyterian women in the congregation, we have a session covenant that's modeled on the national covenant that's in this book that you can use it's a tool. You can't force the session to sign it. But again, even though you could try, there is in there an explanation of how the relationship of Presbyterian women in the congregation and in the session in the church should work. Very helpful tool for folks. There are also appendixes in here, things like the PW logo, things like that session covenant, several things there that could be useful to you. So here's Presbyterian Women Basics. And what we like to point out here is the PW purpose, of course, starts the book. If you'll notice anything we publish at national level, the PW purpose is in there. It's on the copyright page, it's somewhere, because everything that we do relates to the purpose of Presbyterian women. It's a wonderful purpose, and it's evergreen. It's really the same purpose we've had for 237 years, really with just some changes, different changes in language. It says the same thing. So these, right here in this basic section is what I call PW's elevator speech. If anyone asks you, tell me about Presbyterian women, there's this paragraph right here will help you do that. So it's a good one to not put your own spin on, but it's a nice one to give you the basics. Also, we point out here that participation is open to all. PW is a participant organization, not a membership organization. And that gets confusing sometimes. We do have honorary life memberships, so we do use the word membership there. But we are members of the Presbyterian Church USA. And we participate in the purpose of Presbyterian women. That's how that works. And when people will say, you will hear it, well, you're a woman, you're a Presbyterian woman. But I qualify that by saying, are you participating in the purpose? And if you're participating, then indeed, you are a Presbyterian woman. Now, a little bit more on that basic section. There's information here, some information on Horizons. And here's my cheeky question to you. Do you subscribe? Because it's so important. That is your magazine, and if you don't subscribe, who will? Presbyterian Women has been publishing for 237 years. Horizons is the most recent incarnation of Presbyterian women's publishing legacy. So I really do encourage you to subscribe to the magazine. It's not just for leaders, it's for readers. And we hope that you will consider that. Subscriptions are falling. We need to bring those up because it pays for itself, right? We want to continue to be able to publish the magazine. Well, with the help of the sales from the Bible study is the revenue stream that ensures that we can publish Horizons. So I hope that you will consider that. The Bible study also here, of course, is part of that Horizons full subscription. But also here is a structural piece, because I like to describe Presbyterian women's structure in a couple of ways. And one is the circular one that you see here, with the congregation being the larger piece that all the other groups are serving. And same way with that inverted pyramid, just two ways to look at it. But the congregation is really who we are and where we live, and what we all work to at all our levels, national, synod, and presbytery, to serve the women in the pew, the women in the congregation. So here's another view of PW structure, which I shared earlier today in our What's New PW. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pam to talk about the congregation.
Okay, and as Susan said, the congregation, the grassroots is really what Presbyterian Women is all about. And as it says here in the opening, and here when we're talking about the congregational, it is the heart of the PW organization. And you see, there's a lot of information in here. Again, it addresses a little bit about reporting back to your session on an annual basis in those first paragraphs there. I think that one of the most commonly asked questions that I have had over the last 2 years is the one about PW funds. And so I'll point you to that at the bottom of the first column, where it's talking about PW, Presbyterian Women's Funds in the congregation. And the management of that belongs with Presbyterian women. The pastor, the church treasurer, the session cannot dictate to Presbyterian women how they spend their money, what they do with their money. And as I said, this is one of the most common questions that I have had in the past 2 years. One of the probably the most unique situations I had was a result of one of our leadership networking calls that we had this year. And there were 2 calls that were dedicated solely for treasurers. And the woman had some questions and ended up calling me afterwards because she had some serious concerns about her congregation. In their congregation, their session told them, the Presbyterian women, that they could not spend any money unless, and this just floored me in these days and times, unless a male member of session was with them and approved the expense before they could write a check. So I think that's why the PW Essentials is so important, is to get the word out there to make sure that the folks in the congregation, which is the heart of Presbyterian women, understand our connections and our relationship with the Synod and with the larger church, the sessions rather than larger church. Also, I'm sorry, on the other side, okay. On the second column, then about a third of the way down, it does help you understand the PW leadership roles. You notice we use the word leadership and not officers. I think part of our adapting and changing to the current times is it keeps it in being more flexible instead of making it so official and officers. But we are really leaders in the organization. We're all leaders, and some carry larger leadership roles, but it does help you see how you can organize as a PW group. That doesn't mean you have to have all of these roles filled. I know in my own church and presbytery, it's been, well, gosh, we've got these 7 openings. These roles have not been filled for years. My question is then, do we really need them? They haven't been filled for years. What do we need to be effective as Presbyterian women? So it gives, again, be very flexible. It gives you the opportunity to organize and to structure as you need to in your organization, in your church especially. Let's see. Switch. Then you can see the section here on PW histories. If you have a secretary or a historian, or hopefully both, or a volunteer that just really enjoys doing the historical part for you, you can see that those histories get sent to Columbia Theological Seminary. And I'm on the right page even. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't hardly see.
That's all we pointed out on that one. So.
Okay, good. Moving right along. And then we get into Presbyterian women in the presbytery. Again, it gives you opportunities for leadership positions and roles that you may want to consider based on the needs of your organization. Again, you can structure yourself for whatever works for your group. And you also see then there are some job descriptions that are available for you. Again, you can pick and choose those things that are applicable for your group. And again, an important note here, make sure your bylaws reflect your practices there. Understanding too in this connectional church and the relationship that we have, that the presbytery, the PW and the presbyteries is that connection between the congregations and the synod. And that it's so important for that information to flow. I know when we met with, I was able to meet with the synod reps last fall at our church-wide national board meeting, and the issue that came up, their biggest challenge, communication. It's receiving communication, but it's also sharing it. So the information needs to come up from the congregations to their presbyteries, to their synods, to the church-wide, but it also needs to come down. So those as much as anything, you need someone who's a good communicator, someone who will receive information and share it with your congregations, especially receive the information from your synod and share it with your presbyteries. So communication is key here. Again, you can see the note positions can be eliminated or combined depending on the needs of your group.
The history piece again.
This is the history piece again, and again, Presbyterian Synod secretary, historians, or again, you may have a volunteer that really enjoys genealogy, for instance, and wants to volunteer to do that. That information you can see there is the name and the address at the Presbyterian Historical Society where those reports are sent and those histories are sent. Okay. And then we move on to PW and the Synod, and that encompasses your regional Presbyterian congregations and your Presbyterian women's presbyteries. And again, that link, then the Synod is the link. So the information comes up from congregations to presbytery to Synod, and then your Synod rep takes this information and is your representative on the churchwide, national churchwide board of directors. And you can see the leadership opportunities that are there also at the Synod level. Again, structure as needed and works effectively for you in your Synod. And we do have a note over here. Anita has been your Synod rep on the national board. I've enjoyed getting to know you so much, Anita. And that rotates this year. And so Anita has finished her term. And we are excited to have Jane. I think I saw Jane come in. Yeah, Jane joining us this fall. So our first official meeting this year will be in September in Louisville, and Jane will be representing your Synod in that opportunity too. So, again, you have that opportunity from your Synod to send a rep for triennium at a time. Okay, and Susan's done a great job. I have to tell you, Susan's one that's done all the work on pulling this PW Essentials together and ensuring that it constantly. Pardon?
You're doing great.
And she ensures that it gets updated, and there's a lot of information in here. We just came back, we both were at GA representing Presbyterian Women Incorporated, and the results of some of their decisions there affected some of the information in here, and she's already got it up to date and in your hands today. And you can see the rotation model of the different synods then on page 17. That's there for your information too. So all the synod mods don't come on at the same time, and there is that 3-year rotation. Okay, and then this is the national board for you. And a lot of folks still refer to it as the churchwide coordinating team. The current language leans more toward the PW Board of Directors, the National Board of Directors, and they are the link. We are the link to the larger church then for the national programming for you. And you can see there in the box on the left-hand side, and Susan mentioned a little bit ago, that PW is present at the national level at the PCUSA in a number of ways, and we do hold ex officio seat on the Presbyterian Life and Witness Agency board. I told Susan I'm going to have to tattoo that on my hand because I can't hardly remember it, and Mary Jorgensen from Mid-America said it reminded her of the name of a life insurance company. And we're also corresponding members to the General Assembly. We did have those vote but not voice, and it does list for you the national leadership opportunities on the National Board of Directors, and they are on pages 30 to 31 also.
I do have a question, and I think I understand this, but on page 18 it says all members of the PWE Board of Directors and members of the Churchwide Search Committee are members of the Presbyterian Church USA. So that is a mandatory qualification.
That's correct. That's part of our incorporation status. And we do ask also at the other levels if whoever is moderating or pulling the group together, whatever you decide to call that, and if anyone is counting money, if money's involved, then those folks need to be Presbyterian Church USA members also. Otherwise, we're very ecumenical, but there are certain leadership positions that require PCUSA membership. So when you're putting people into roles, it's best to be mindful of those two particulars in all the levels.
That's a great question. Please ask your questions. This is an informational session for you. You want to make sure that you all know what's in this document and what a great resource it is for you. So I think this is where you pick up.
Is it? Yeah. A registrar for gatherings, and yeah, we don't, but it is a role that we fill, and we have them all the way up to national, of course. Very important role, but she doesn't have to be a Presbyterian. Neither does your gathering coordinator. But yeah, that's an important role. That should never be done without consultation with coordinating teams, but yeah, you're right. That historically has not been listed as an official position, but we know it's one. A lot of times it's the vice moderator's role to be the registrar, or, just depending on your presbytery or synod, folks have different ways of approaching those tasks.
Gives you choices.
Yeah, and always, like in bylaws and that sort of thing, you want to be careful not to limit your group. Say what's necessary, but also leave your coordinating teams flexibility. When we incorporated at the national level in 2009, our bylaws were a huge booklet at the national level, and a lot of that information actually went into now what we call the board manual, because they were processes and procedures and additional information, but not bylaws, because if it's bylaws, it should be, again, what's necessary, but won't tie up your coordinating team for everyday decisions. So when you get to our national triennial business meeting, you'll see that the things that the voting reps are responsible for are the budget, the triennial budget. They're responsible for the board of directors, who sits at the board of directors, large policy changes that might come forward, but mostly the coordinating team, the church-wide coordinating team, or the board of directors has the ability to make decisions it needs to make in that 3-year interim. Even the budget is a proposed budget, and the coordinating team is the one, or the board is the one who manages the audit and all of those pieces that they report to the voting representatives at the triennial business meeting. But the board is responsible for the actions of the voting representatives and the corporation when the corporation is not meeting. So again, you don't want to make your bylaws complex so that they tie up your coordinating team, but that they do indeed express the essentials that are critical to the organization. I hope that's helpful. So again, you're seeing this chart of how national relates at the church-wide level for the PCUSA. You see again there this integrated auxiliary I talked about earlier. We are a member ex officio. Now that's a change. From the early 2000s, Presbyterian women as an organization gained a seat on that agency of the Presbyterian Church that was called, at the time, the General Assembly Council, became the General Assembly Mission Council, became the Presbyterian Mission Agency Board, and now is called Presbyterian Life and Witness, as combined with the Office of the General Assembly. Hazel Furmeister gained that seat as the moderator of Presbyterian women at the General Assembly, a seat with voice and vote. But as changes in the church have happened, as well as changes in Presbyterian women, like incorporation in 2009, that seat has now shifted to match the seats of the other agencies. We're not an agency, we're called an entity because the General Assembly does not name our board or our budget, so we're an entity of the church. But we're now treated like an agency with an ex officio seat, which means the executive director or the moderator sit with an ex officio seat on that board with voice, but not vote. People may say we've lost a vote, but we really haven't. We've just settled into where we now should be as an entity or agency of the church. So we were such an anomaly on the Presbyterian Life and Witness Now board that something needed to be shifted to make us make sense for who we are in the larger church. So again, some people have seen that and talked to me about we've lost a vote, but it's really the only thing that makes sense now that we're incorporated. So Hazel's work is still important because we're still there, right? Back in those days, we were not independent at the national level. We were not incorporated when Hazel gained that seat, and we didn't have our own staff. We were called rent-a-staff in those days, where we were PW staff, but we were underneath the women's ministry unit of the Presbyterian Church USA. So after PW in court, we were always PW staff and paid for by PW, but we were underneath the church structure. And finally, it took till 2014 to move us to the organization so that now, yay, we belong to you. So that change was, we always did your work, you always paid us, but that shifted the authority to the board to manage Presbyterian women's staff. So anyway, more than you bargained for in that moment. We are a member of the corporate board of the Presbyterian Church USA. That seat is with voice and vote. Carol Winkler was our first person on that. That board was formed 8 years ago, and Carol became our first representative as she came off being moderator of Presbyterian women at the national level. She is now rotated off, and Mary Martin, who's from the Synod of South Atlantic, will be taking that seat on the corporate board of the church. Yeah.
What group is that, the Presbyterian Council?
This is called Presbyterian Church USA, a corporation, and that is the absolute business end of the PCUSA. They used to be embedded in that Presbyterian Mission Agency Board. They were embedded there, but they were extracted 8 years ago as a separate entity. They're the only other entity, so there are two of us, A Corp and PW. But they are named by the General Assembly, so we remain an anomaly in the structure. But that's the corporation board. That's where all the legal stuff sits, property sits, the finance and accounting for the church sits. And you'll see here that PW, the reason we have a seat there with voice and vote is because we have one of the largest contracts with the corporation of the church, right? So we have an agreement with them for all sorts of services, including finance and accounting at the national level, HR, IT, all the things that they are responsible for. We purchase those from the church, and also our lease to have some office space in the building in Louisville. So we're one of the largest clients of the church, so we gained a seat there to have influence on what that board decides. So, yeah. We have the covenant or the institutional relationship agreement, again, that expresses how the General Assembly relates to the organization and vice versa, what they're responsible for, what we're responsible for. We have a corresponding membership. Pam and I currently are serving as the executive director and the national moderator as corresponding members to the General Assembly. That means we have a seat behind the commissioners, and there's a mic for corresponding members, and we have the ability to have voice, to talk to any item of business. We can sit in on any committee, and if the moderator recognizes us, express our view or our information. So we have the ability to impact the GA in that way. As corresponding members. And PW continues to have 2 seats there, which is nice, even in all the changes that are recent changes to the church. We are a related corporation to the General Assembly. And finally, it took until 2016 we entered the Organization for Mission, right? 237 years we were not in the church's Organization for Mission. Well, 230, whatever, minus 2016. But we finally got there in 2016, recognized as a mission agency of the church. We have a service agreement, which is part of that A Corp situation we have. We're a member of the Advisory Committee of Women and Gender Justice, which is a General Assembly committee. And we're a partner with Presbyterian Women, or Presbyterian Mission at the United Nations, as we've heard about. And that's, we're a member of the United Nations as Presbyterian Women. And as was explained to you last night, there are two groups. There's the Presbyterian Church, who's had membership at the United Nations since the United Nations inception. The Presbyterian Church has been there, recognized as an NGO, non-governmental organization. Presbyterian Women gained their own recognition in 2018. We went through a 5-year application process. That's how long it takes for a faith-based group to be recognized by the UN. And they told me, they warned me, and they were right. It took 5 years, so we started on it in 2013. We got our recognition but during the business meeting, actually, in 2018, which was very exciting for us, and began our own delegation work, which doubled the size of the Presbyterian delegation to the United Nations. So yeah, it's a very exciting piece of what we do as Presbyterian Women. And thanks again for your fabulous presentation. So yeah, that's our relationship with National. There's a lot going on there. So we're back to Pam, actually, talking about the board of directors.
Goodness. Okay, and you can see the board of directors has a big job description, from administration personnel to funds development for the organization, leader training and grassroots communication, to ensuring programmatic resources like Horizons and that our Bible study. And you can see the board of directors, one of the major responsibilities too is producing and developing that church-wide gathering and the triennial business meeting. And you know, in regard to your comment you made about registrar, that is, I will say, in my experience over the years, we have invited someone, I almost lost friendships over this once. We've invited a chair to that, lead that, and it's a huge project. We've already been working on it over a year.
Oh, we got
a year and a half, 2 years.
I signed the contracts in 2024.
Yeah, toward the 2027 church-wide gathering. So, and developing the triennial business meeting too, very much like what you did yesterday morning with your business meeting on a much larger scale. So we will look at the business and resolutions and things that come before the business meeting just prior to the gathering next year in Louisville. So that'll be my swan song.
Not really. She has another year on the board, but she keeps acting like that's not true. He has 1 year to, it was voted many trienniums ago by the voting reps to have the moderator stay on an extra year as an advisor to the new moderatorial team. So Pam enters advisory mode after the business meeting in 27.
So Kelsey and I'll be responsible for the business meeting next year, so, yeah.
It's their party.
Yes. Yay.
So we want to talk next a little bit about the next section of your book, section 7, which talks about communications and resources. This, of course, is where we lift up Horizons Magazine and the Bible Study again and give you information on circulation and the way that those pieces work. Also, we lift up a resource called Voice and Vote, the Price of Voice and Vote. It's an older resource. We've been talking about it a little bit. Presbyterian Women has had historically voice and vote at Presbytery and Synod councils. We know they're members of the session, but often in their churches. But we have had roles with voice, and that changes. It fluctuates all the time. Where we have voice and vote, there's a reorganization. We lose or gain that seat in presbyteries and synods. So this resource was created a while ago to talk about the value and the importance of Presbyterian women maintaining that presence at the PCUSA Presbytery and Synod Council level. We work hard to maintain it at the national level because that sets the tone for the rest of the groups throughout the church, the rest of the levels. If we lose it at national, it'll be very hard, and that was one of Hazel's big pushes to ensure, and she's very present in this Voice and Vote. She's wrote some great articles about why PW matters, and they're still important. So I do, and they still can be used to talk about, when your Presbytery, PCUSA Presbytery decides to get rid of PW's seat. She has great arguments in there on why that should not be done. Yeah. 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 Excellent. Well, that's a great story, Jane, and I think so important that people stand up and say, wait a minute, you can't do this. And often, the voice is heard if the voice is there to say, always paying attention. You have to be paying attention, don't you, at those levels. So appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, I recommend that to you. Again, there's maps in there. The data is old about where we have Voice and Vote across the PCUSA universe. So that's outdated, but the information is still relevant. We'll update it one of these days. Or maybe we can get a volunteer to do that. That'd be fabulous. See me if you're interested. I think you're up.
Okay, so we move into then PW giving and funding, and as shared earlier this morning, there is the brochure downstairs that helps understand the annual mission fund, explains what it is. Also, there's information down there on the birthday and the thank offerings as well. And we do have the annual report from 2025. We have copies of that available for you in the resource center. I am going to take this opportunity. One of the things that I have been sharing this past 2 years in this role is the importance of supporting the annual fund. And I think there's still a lot of PW that I talk to that really don't understand what it's about. The annual mission fund supports all of the work, all of the programming and projects and ministries of Presbyterian women nationwide, but that also supports then down to the presbyteries and the synods. And as I said earlier today, our staff, because we are incorporated, we hire and provide salaries and benefits for our own staff. It also helps subsidize our magazine and our Bible studies. We'd love for them to be self-funding, but they don't quite pay for themselves. So we are totally a self-funded organization. One thing that I've heard a lot over the last 2 years is, but doesn't the church give Presbyterian women money? The answer is no, they do not. We actually support the church in many ways. So I can't say enough the importance of this annual fund. I mentioned this morning our 237 years. Hey, what a great donation if everybody gave $237 toward the annual fund this year. But if you can't do that, make it more reasonable within your groups. $5, as Susan said, we are not a membership organization. We are participants. If every participant that we believe is out there and active in Presbyterian women gave $5 each year, that would be close to $500,000 that would help support all of our missions and all of the ministry work that we do as Presbyterian women. So I encourage you to take this annual mission fund back to your groups and explain the importance of it. And I know I still meet some groups that say, oh, we give $1 a person toward the annual fund every year. And I said, gosh, think about inflation. What's that dollar worth today? That was 20 years ago. Anyway, so I encourage you to look at that section too on giving and funding and the importance of it and all the great works that you've seen this morning too. We shared with you through some of these offerings. So.
Pam, I'll jump in on inflation just quickly. This morning we talked about Yodogawa Christian Hospital. The original gift was around $200,000, which was Presbyterian women's largest birthday offering up until that time in the 1950s. That gift is now worth well over $2 million. right? If we were giving it today, we would be handing the hospital over $2 million. So, yeah, that dollar, it does change as we go through time. Also, with the mission fund, the mission pledge, which it originally was called back in 1988, it's the infrastructure for the whole organization. So we know that when we collect the birthday and thank offering, those are designated funds. That money is used for birthday and thank offering. But if we didn't have the mission fund or the annual fund, there would be no infrastructure to move that money. We wouldn't be able to get those gifts to those grantees. So it matters in all of the aspects to provide that infrastructure that allows us to do the work of Presbyterian women that's required at that national level. We can't move a birthday offering without legal services, and we pay for legal services from the church, especially right now with all kinds of sanctions and difficulty moving money. We need that legal infrastructure to be able to fulfill our purpose and our programs. It's true also with Fellowship of the Least Coin. PW is the fiduciary agent for Least Coin in the United States. We do that pro bono for Fellowship of the Least Coin. There's no admin money that comes off Fellowship of the Least Coin for us to do that work. What we do is we give that. That's part of what the annual fund does, is allow us to serve Least Coin in that way by providing those fiduciary services and ensuring that they can move their grants. You know, right now we're struggling to move a grant to Ukraine. We're struggling for them, for Least Coin, for a women's project in Ukraine. We're struggling to move a grant for them to Myanmar. And we need our legal department to help us with moving this money. So the annual fund really allows us to be who we are in ecumenically in the church and for our own mission. So sorry to interrupt you, Pam, but I felt inspired.
Great, please do. We're going to keep being inspired here. Moving on to this slide then. And again, it does remind us of PW Gives Day, which is July the 31st. Again, another opportunity to encourage all to support. And as I've said these last 2 years, this is our organization. Presbyterian Women is our organizations. I'm sure, like me, you get asked for money by many, many, many organizations. But for me, Presbyterian Women is number one, and it should be. It is our organization and does need and require our support. I know even with my family, when they've said, my gosh, Mom, you know, it's your age, which is always a dangerous introduction to anything. Yeah, and I know how old I am. What do you don't really need anything, Mom. And I've told them for a number of years, make a donation to Presbyterian Women Incorporated if you'd like. I said, that's what I want. That is what I really want. Also, it mentions in here too about memorial gifts. I know my circle at my church, there are only about 15 of us anymore. But when a PW participant passes, we make a donation to the annual fund in their honor. And so there are other ways that are spelled out for you here on these pages. The honorary memberships are listed here too. I proudly wear my honorary life membership pin that I got, but this money goes to support leadership development grants that are available for a number of opportunities. One being, we go back to the Commission on the Status of Women again. There are funds available through that. There are also funds to support young women in leadership opportunities. It could be a gathering, it could be another educational or faith-based event. So that it does support the honorary life memberships too. And we have information about the thank and birthday offerings, and there's so many other opportunities that are available there, like on page 25, if you want to check that out. Okay? Yeah.
Is there anything specific that the PW Gives Day money goes to particularly? Is it chosen each year, or how does that money manage?
To them.
It goes to the general annual fund. So because there's such a change in the congregational giving up through Presbyterian Synod, National has needed to put in efforts to ensure that there's enough funding. So it goes undesignated to the general fund for National Presbyterian Women so we can continue to support the infrastructure.
Okay, great questions.
Yeah.
Please don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, that's the next slide up there already.
Oh, okay.
No, you're good. That's you.
Oops, okay. Yeah, and I was just referring to these. It does give you some other opportunities, the memorial gifts, recognition gifts, some of the things I had talked about, and then looking at the various endowment funds that are available. Also, there's one named after in honor of Susan Jackson Dowd, honestly, and did you know that? No? It's listed in here, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's for inclusive community. A donor gave 2 $100,000 endowments a few years ago, and one was for his wife, Anna Bedford, who was the founding editor of the Horizons Bible Study, to ensure that we could continue to produce Bible study. And the other one he graciously named for me for inclusive, I got to say what it would be for, and I said for inclusive community, which is such an important piece of our purpose. And it does generate interest, which is used. We used it to create the RED training, the Racial Equity Dialogue training, before the 2024 gathering. We were able to scholarship 2 people from each synod to come to that event out of that endowment. So fabulous stuff happens.
They're on the top of page 25 in the PW Essentials that you have. Yeah. So thank you, Susan.
Do you want me to mention NCTC, which is down there?
Yes.
We've had another very amazing gift come to Presbyterian women from a donor who is anonymous. She gave $1 million, and it's being sent to National, $333,000 every spring for 3 years. And her wish, it's not designated, but her wish for that money was that it ensure that we can produce a church-wide gathering moving forward. So she didn't say it's for the gathering. She said ensure we can produce one. So there are lots of pieces that go into producing a gathering. So she left it up to staff to say what we need to get the gathering done. So she was a lot of, it was very moving to the staff that she allowed that space. Of course, we always consult with leadership. We have not used any of the money. It's growing very quickly because we put it into a trust fund, New Covenant Trust Company, which is part of the Presbyterian Church Foundation. But it operates on a different kind of spending formula. The foundation grows very incrementally. New Covenant Trust Company is a much more progressive and aggressive way of investing money, so it's growing very quickly. If you look at our gathering budget, you see there's just a little piece of that will be used as a balancing amount if we need it, if we don't get the participation we need in the church-wide gathering. So it will do what she has hoped, and that is provide the ability to provide church-wide gatherings going forward. So I wish I could name her, but I can't. She's an amazing Presbyterian woman, very strong heart for justice and peace, person who attended Commission on the Status of Women. So that's why New Covenant Trust Company has come into PW's financial picture. But again, it's a part of the foundation. They follow all the guidelines of the foundation for responsible investing. So we're safe in there with our purpose.
And so that's also listed in the second column there at the very bottom of the page on page 25 to give you that information. And I would just like to say if anyone else would like to make a $1 million donation.
We're here for you.
We are here for you. We are very responsible and have very strong accounting practices and good fiduciary.
Yes, talk to Rhonda if you have questions.
Absolutely. And as I tell Susan, I live in a shoe at home, so I was the old woman in the shoe. So, but I buy a lottery ticket every now and then, and if I win, a big portion of it will go to Presbyterian women, and they will take that money.
We will put it to good use.
We will use it, yes.
Finally, we're drawing to a close here, but we want to talk a little bit about The ecumenical relationships that we have, we've mentioned them already, the anniversaries that are coming up for Least Coin Fellowship, the Least Coin World Day of Prayer. Also, PW is a member, has historically been a member of Church Women United. We opted not to be represented on the General Council of Church Women United, Common Council, for some years because of some challenges they were having at the national level. But we were invited recently to come back to a reorganized Common Council. And so we do have Pam currently sitting there for Presbyterian women as a denominational representative. I've also put the World Association of Christian Communicators into this book because I think it's important that we note that Presbyterian women is involved in communication justice globally. This is part of our Working for Justice and Peace that we've fulfilled for a long time. We just haven't talked about it very much. Communication justice is at the foundation of all justice. If you can't communicate, then what? So it's global. So it's not just social media like we talk about here for our communication, but supplying radios to communities that have no resources across the world and have no access, they have no voice. It's supplying cell phones to women who can take a picture of what's happening to them and send that somewhere if they can get a signal, of course, but it allows folks to be able to document their lives, sometimes in what we would consider old-timey, rudimentary ways. But if you're looking across the global needs of people and their ability to communicate and share their stories, then it's critical that we be involved. There's a lot of work going on at WAC now, WAC Global, about internet justice, particularly for women and children, women and girls. And what's going on with AI? They're looking very carefully at these issues. How does that impact minority cultures and people who are living on the margins? And women and girls, always. But so a critical piece that we've always been engaged in, but we don't talk about it. And I think it's time that we talk about this very critical piece of our justice and peace work. Where are we now? So a quick overview of our PW relationships. Again, we've talked about a lot of this. There's a little more on the insurance agency known as PLNW, Presbyterian Life and Witness. That's now a big part of our church. Thank you. And the areas of that agency, Presbyterian Women traditionally has related at the national level to wherever women's ministries was. In the new structure of that agency, there is no women's ministries. For the first time ever, that's gone. Now, there was a fight because racial equity also went away. There was a ministry unit, Racial Equity and Women's Intercultural Ministries. There was an overture that came that brought racial equity back, but no one talked about women's ministries and the need to ensure that that wasn't dispersed, which it has been, across the other offices. So there's a little pocket of women's ministries in the advocacy offices, and there's a little pocket of it in a leadership development office. But the rest of women's ministries is no longer part of the PCUSA structure. So that I have said all along as I watched this coming, are you saying that this all falls now to Presbyterian women? If so, we need to talk because that's a lot. And the Presbyterian Church needs to own responsibility for women's ministries. So we'll see how that shifts and changes as we go forward. But it is, if you're looking for women's ministries, it's not there. And these constituency groups who are listed here, their relationships were with not necessarily national Presbyterian women, but with the liaisons in racial equity in women's intercultural ministries. So they're missing their partners right now. We have located, we're reconnecting, we spend a lot of time at the national level trying to reforge pathways to how folks get to the resources that are still part of that agency structure. But it's been a bumpy ride as we've tried to connect folks. Because when Encuentro is getting ready to meet, they're not necessarily talking to PW, they're talking to the liaison office in what was Racial Equity and Intercultural Ministries, now sitting in a program called Global Ecumenical Liaisons, which is part of the large Change to World mission. As you know probably, that world mission has also been dissipated and changed into this Global Ecumenical Liaison program. We could spend a lot of time on it, but we're out of time, so that's not the workshop. But if you have questions or would like to talk about that, we certainly can do that, because the world mission question has been a big one, and it's a big one for Presbyterian women. We partnered with World Mission for many years to send our offerings. We were vetted on the ground by our mission co-workers as to whether a grant would make it to the site that we were trying to send it to or not. You know, we had that work. So we're finding our ways now to work that in the new structure, but it has caused us to be quite flexible, to shift a bit. We withheld international grants for over a year because we didn't have that pathway. But we're getting there. We're ramping back up and all will be well, but there's a lot of change that's gone on. There's a lot of information in here about starting a new PW group. Yes, new PW groups are starting. I get calls a few times a month for folks who are looking for help to do that. What do they need to do? How do they get started? There's also great information in this chapter on starting a new PW group, on just re-energizing your group. Maybe there's some steps in there to start a group, which are actually really helpful if you're trying to re-energize or rethink yourselves as Presbyterian women. There's in the congregation or presbytery even. There's also, I'm going to move on here because we're going low on time. There's also information in this section about maintaining groups once you get a group started. Oh. There's also information on closing a PW group and what that looks like. So I'm flipping this kind of fast now because I'm watching our time. But there's a good section here on what to do if PW in the congregation is closing, PWP is closing. We have one PW Synod that is mostly closed at this point, but they're still communicating and they're still being represented at the national level, but they really don't have a coordinating team anymore. There are 166 presbyteries in the PCUSA, and we've lost, I would say, at least 10 PWPs and more on the verge, struggling to find leadership. But as Pam said earlier, PWP is a critical hub for the organization, just like it is for the church. So it's really important that we don't lose those congregations that are in that presbytery coordinating team. May have some very strong congregations in the presbytery. So it's really important to ensure that there's communication still flowing to a neighboring presbytery, to the synod, to national. Keep those folks connected to Presbyterian women so they don't fall out of the fabric of Presbyterian Women's Network, and they're still participating, receiving information. Otherwise, they become just a congregational women's group, which is a good thing, but PW gets its strength from our network. We have impact, such impact globally because we're such a strong network. You know, one PW in a congregation is still an important piece of that network. And we need those connections to be who we are in the larger church, in the larger world. So this does give you information on closing, but it focuses on what to do when a presbytery closes, ensuring that you keep those connections going. Anyway, also glad to help, not really glad, I will help. I don't want to see anyone close. And one of the first things you'll hear from me is, let's think, is there any way to keep this going in a very different way? You know, what are the possibilities here? So it's good to have that conversation, and no one person or couple of people should ever close the PW without consulting other folks in the church about what's happening. That should not be an isolated decision in a vacuum of a couple of folks who are ready to close. So we talked about this, financial responsibilities and maintaining connections. There are financial responsibilities when a PW closes because some of the money may be designated. And if it's designated, then it needs to move along to where it goes. If it's not designated, but it's designated locally, then the women need to decide how that money will be dispersed. It's not automatic in a congregation. The session moves in and takes that money for the boiler. That's not how that works. That's designated money. And PW needs to make decisions about how that moves when a PWC closes. There are appendixes, as we've mentioned. Here they are listed. You can see them in your book. Lots of good information to connect to. A lot of live links in the online version of PW Essentials that will take you right to where you need to go on the PW website. And I think, Pam, that brings us home.
Yeah, back to just another subtle reminder about our upcoming churchwide gathering next year. And now is the time to be planning. It's going to be an excellent opportunity. And just want to remind you, too, that we're also doing that leadership summit, that leadership event just prior to the business meeting. And that's going to be on August 2 through 4. So, again, we're really putting a lot of thought into ensuring that we're equipping PW leaders, too, for the roles that they're volunteering for. Just a reminder, Susan and I are always available, as are all the staff at the PW office in Louisville. We are here to help you in whatever way we can come, as I have said for the past 2 years, whether it's coming to your church, your presbytery, your synod, phone calls, Zoom meetings, whatever it takes to be that resource for you when and if you need us. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, thank you.